hear me, not talk that much about product at the beginning, but really kind of introduce the investment opportunity. With that said, Greenwood Clean Energy is today recognized in an emerging field as the #1 brand in residential wood-fired and biomass heating. We've spent about $1.2 million since July 2009 developing our product, implementing manufacturing right here in Tacoma, and developing the initial portion of our dealer channel. And we've begun selling product in the latter part of last year and generated about $270,000 of revenues in 2011. We're raising about $1 million, and the segment within which we operate is the $25 billion heating and cooling industry, and the subsegment thereof would be the renewable energy portion of the heating industry. A segment that will be targeted by all the major players for acquisition over the next 5 to 6 years. Let me first introduce you to a customer of ours, Julie, and her husband Rob, who live in upstate New York in a beautiful 3,000 plus square foot home, and spend about $3,500 a year heating the place, both hot water and space heat. And they use heating oil, as do about 12 to 13 million households in the U.S. Heating oil or propane. And always would wonder if there is a solution that would help them save, first of all, on that relatively large expense. Difficult to understand when you live out here in the Pacific Northwest, but they're at minus 20 degrees up there. And a solution that would also integrate easily with their existing heating system, warm their entire house and all of their hot water. And that is exactly what we do at Greenwood. We manufacture and distribute biomass heating systems that use wood as a source of fuel. Now, this isn't a new segment. It's actually, for the past 20 years, a small market segment that Julie and Rob could have used to purchase an old dirty burning boiler at. 60,000 of which are sold every year. So when you look at the 14 million households that use wood as a primary or secondary resource, and recognize that according to Google Analytics January results, 620,000 keyword searches just on wood boiler and wood furnace. Not stoves, not fireplace, wood boiler and wood furnace to heat your house. That's what generates those $60,000. The reason our partners in us are interested in this space is that the EPA is about to regulate this segment and put in place extremely harsh emission regulations, requiring you to take almost 90% or more emissions out of your current emission flow from these old $60,000 products, $60,000 a year products. It will completely restrict the supply of the products, but at the same time, if you are EPA qualified, you can now get access to subsidies, which would actually drive the demand, a gap in the market that we certainly are very eager to fill. A little bit about biomass heat in the market itself. Fuels are sourced from cordwood forest residues all the way to processing residues, which then get formatted either in the form of pellets, which some of us, or almost all of us, are familiar with, lightly formatted in the form of chips or hog fuel, and then not formatted, the stuff you put in your fireplace, regular cordwood. And then applied against various applications, from rural residential to suburban residential, all the way up to institutions like small school buildings and government buildings. As a company, we are laser focused only on one small segment, which is rural residential and cordwood to start with, which is about a $500 million market a year. And a market that's driven today by energy prices. The Northeast is back to almost $4 a gallon of heating oil. regulations we just talked about, and some subsidies. And when you compare that to a market that has done this, you'd have to look to Europe, where about 10 years ago, very similar emission regulations have been put in place. And that market traditionally had offered very similar dirty burning product, and has now developed into 300,000 units sold every year, about $2 billion in revenue since that time. Combination of new regulation, new technology that now drives these products, and subsidies that have been put in place to drive the market. With the $1.2 million, we've actually acquired the assets of a company that developed the Greenwood brand, completely re-engineered the product that we now are producing in Tacoma. So prior company's production was in Canada and Mexico. Being from the state of Washington, we wanted to bring all production back here. We're big believers in making product where you live, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute. Patented our product. We're now in about 30 key markets with 20 plus dealers, about 50 dealers in backlog. Our website today receives about 15,000 unique visitors. And some of the key partnerships that we have developed, all the many that you see here, are with the U.S. Endowment for Forging and Communities. It's a $200 million fund on the East Coast that looks after helping forest communities to find new ways to do business. They helped us with a $250,000 grant take the product out of the lab and into the market. And then Innovate Washington, the Department of Commerce and Energy money, helped us take small-up production into a more automated manufacturing process with about a $350,000 award that we got last year. Here's typically where I point to your investment package to read about all the bios of all the investors, which we don't have here today. But the team, most importantly, has worked for many years as a team in different projects. 3 of us actually were in the old company developing the dealer channel. So we've actually built this business to $10 million in revenue once before. And some of the new folks on board would include biomass combustion and engineering expertise from large industrial combustion systems that have helped us develop this new company. We've supplemented this with a really strategic extended team. Tacoma Steel, a big 100-plus-year-old steel manufacturer in Tacoma, who's now in a joint venture with us making the products, Greenwood Manufacturing LLC. We own 15% of that. And E.J. Bartels, also located here in Renton with kilns in Spokane, the country's largest supplier of ceramics to the hearth industry, fireplaces, inserts, and whatnot. And they've helped us develop the ceramic firebox in this combustion system. In order to fill this gap, we had to come up with game-changing technology, which we call crossfire combustion system. And it allows us to efficiently burn woody biomass and turn it into usable heat. And to do this, though, we could no longer depend on heretofore used mechanisms and technologies, which is fairly low-tech, and had to incorporate computer-driven management of a combustion process. And so the onboard computer today manages, in essence, where we put air, at what time of the combustion process, and at what volume. So we've got a variable speed fan in the back that runs from as low as 800 RPMs to as high as 5,000 RPMs that draws air through the system, and then various mechanisms that put the air where it needs to be, and obviously at the right volume. And those algorithms is a core part of what we've developed for the past 3 years. But all of this is made, simple for Julie, who's only interested in using wood and wants to be sure that she confidently can put wood in the boiler, walk away, and know that it burns efficiently, cleanly, and heats her house and all of her hot water and she interfaces with that entire system through two buttons. The smoke guard button, I call it a peak button. You can look in the border, you push it before you open it up. And then your load button, once you've loaded wood, you hit the button and the algorithm takes the burn process right back to the beginning. And you know, for the next 8, 10, 11 hours, heats your house without you having to do it. Competition, a relatively easy slide today because the categories of competitors today will fall into two categories. The ones that will meet the new EPA regulations and the ones that won't. In this particular segment, there's about 65 or so competitors, some of them fairly small. And once these regulations come into play by the end of 2012, as of today, that's 5 years in, everybody knowing what the rules are, what the new methodologies are, because it's now a voluntary standard that will become mandatory. Only 12 companies have been able to come up with qualifying product. Equally as fascinating in all of this is European manufacturers who have had years to develop product against their emission standards. Only one of those competitors has been able to qualify. Much of that is driven by the emission test methodologies being very different in Europe from the US, because the customers in Europe happen to be rather different from the US. And we can go into that a little bit in the Q&A process. How we take the product to market, very traditional. We use the hearth and plumbing and heating channel to establish regional footprints, who then market and sell the product to the end user, and service the end user, just as you would do with a gas boiler or a oil boiler. And our home market clearly being the Pacific Northwest, reaching out to Colorado and Utah, with the British Columbia and Alaska being a really big portion of sales. But low-hanging fruit for us today, the Northeast with the biggest penetration of oil-fired heating systems, and a big producer of the 60,000 unit sales per year, and eventually moving into the Midwest. We do have an office and warehouse right east of Albany today. And when you look at each of those dealers in the channel, they're very rural businesses, typically second generation. They're the local guys that come and fix your furnace or sell you a new furnace or a cooling system during the summer. And as I said before, we're in 30 plus markets. We've just closed what potentially could be game-changing opportunity for us in the US, which is a hydronics distributor, $600 million company, FW Web, 60 plus locations in the Northeast. And when the HVAC contractor goes to install a system and needs a pump and piping and flanges and aquastats, that's where they go to pick up product. Just like the place where they go and buy a single train or Lennox boiler if they need to replace one. And FW Web, first time in 100 years, so the company has actually put a wood boiler into their product catalog. So we'll be carefully developing this channel over the next 12 months. Then we provide our dealers with tools to make them successful. We always want to say we're not selling a product, a boiler, to our dealers. We're selling them a program to make money that does good on the other end. So we need to help them understand how they actually can market this product in their markets. And we're doing this with relatively traditional tools again, from banners to ad mats and all the different things from the marketing side that you could possibly imagine. Control our brand very tightly doing so. We do a lot of online marketing, and you have in 2 keyword families alone 620,000 monthly searches. There's a lot of beautiful opportunity to create demand and interest. And we use a lead management system where we push all of those online inquiries into our website, 2 different places, pick up these leads and automatically forward them to our leaders, who then turn around and use our tools to market themselves, either putting up a small trailer and run them down to the local mall and small fairs, or put it into, take out big displays of large county fairs, think Puyallup Fair, but smaller, and in any rural place in the areas that we just talked about. They take a boiler out there that has a hot water heater and a fan, and blow it, and have several lined up. And they open up the door, you see a lot of fire in 90-degree heat. During the summer, you get people and they're interested in what you have. They're familiar with burning wood, and they now understand that you can burn it without any smoke coming out the chimney, which is kind of unique. You see a burning fire when you open up the door, nothing coming out the chimney. Or put it on billboards and other means of marketing. And then we take the orders in Tacoma in a just-in-time, lean manufacturing process. If you remember Innovate Washington at the beginning, one of our strategic partners, which is money that came through the Department of Commerce, helped us actually develop a automatic welding line. Iron Man 2, who saw the movie? When Stark goes in the lab and he dials up his new suit and that robot arm comes out and welds it up. It's exactly the same robot, right? We did not know that until some of us went for training out there. But that heat exchanger here, developed, by the way, by the University of Washington at Framlich's engineering department right here 4 or 5 years ago. That heat exchanger was about to go to China, much to our chagrin, because we could not get it under 4.5, 5 hours of welding. 10, 15% rejection rates at least. There's a lot of weld points on these things here. And 45 minutes, 0 rejection today. So we're even compared to Chinese prices, maybe about 10% more expensive. But you know what? That's okay. We're not building a Yugo. We're building a high-end unit, and keep most of the manufacturing here in the state by doing these type of things, which we will do more and more. And then we line them up for shipping and staging. I think this is a truckload that goes out to New York, and talk a little bit about financials. There's 2 key economic drivers that drive this business. First and foremost will be dealers. It takes about a year for a dealer to get comfortable in the market. And a hockey stick in revenue comes after about 2-3 years when you have enough dealers in and everybody has gotten to their comfort level, and their marketing dollars that have now gone out for 2-3 years are taking hold, and you'll see an increase in sales. And then secondly, gross margins will get to our 42% at about 500 units moved per year. That gives us the purchasing volume per part and sub-assembly that we need to drive costs down. And from an investor perspective, exits would be to a traditional heating and cooling manufacturer like a Lennox. I don't know if anybody's familiar with them. Look in the downstairs at your furnace, and it probably says Train, Lennox, Crane, or something like that. The high-end boiler manufacturers like Buderus and Viessmann, which we're not that familiar with out here on the West Coast, have already begun to purchase mostly European-based biomass manufacturers, light commercial and commercial. They're starting to look at this eventually. And your returns there are anywhere on the low end between 10 and the high end between 15 times of an investor's initial investment. So we call them doubles and triples. We're not the Groupon, Facebook home run, but it's a great business that we love. That's right out here in Washington. From a use of proceeds perspective, the $1 million, and we are going to raise more, which just got announced at a due diligence meeting today, is used for the most part for some remaining production tooling, marketing, working capital, some contingency. And the game-changing event that happened in the past 2 weeks is that the United Kingdom has just funded what is most likely the world's largest subsidy regime for renewable energy heating systems targeting the residential market. They are trying to implement 1.4 million residential units over the next 10 years. They're funding that through a solar-like scheme where your kilowatt-hour output per Greenwood unit pays you 300 to 400 pounds a quarter, close to 2,000 pounds a year, depending on output, for as long as your system is in place. So as you can imagine, that's something that we're going to focus on. We've been working with the Department of Commerce and their London representation for the past 8 months to see if we have a play. We now know that we do. We now know that our product actually works really well for this market. Very surprising to us because we never thought that we'd compete in Europe. And so we're going to raise a little bit more money to implement with partners in England a Greenwood brand that is going to play within that sector. Status today, we are in due diligence with various investor groups here in town. We've just completed a couple of open houses. Our product is one where if you come and see it and you see it burn in our labs right here in Bellevue, it's one of those aha moments where it all makes sense once you feel 2,000 degrees and you can see it. And then in Tacoma, as you visit and you see our robots in action, the lasers and the assembly process, again, it's one of those moments where a product like this becomes real. Thanks. Questions? That is the next